Hello and welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast, where two comic fans and two non-comic fans talk about comic books and comic book history. I'm Sly.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
So, month of Edgelord August is here, about to wrap up, and we're going to cover the original Edgelord. Not the original Edgelord, that's Nietzsche. The original Edgelord in comics is Alan Moore.
Now, if you're a casual comic book fan, you've probably heard of a lot of Alan Moore works like Watchmen or V for Vendetta.
Killing Joke,
yeah, which
Swamp
we've covered
Thing.
before. Swamp Thing, which we've covered before.
If you're a casual comic fan, you know about Swamp Thing.
yeah.
But why did we pick League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Because that had like a movie with Sean Connery. That doesn't seem super edgy.
Yeah, so we should clarify some stuff about Alan Moore.
He worships a snake out in the woods.
Yeah, he's a crazy sorcerer guy. But more importantly, for Edgelord August, he basically started the trend of cynical British comic books and that like Mark Millar and Garth Ennis and Pat Mills all spawned from. They basically all became big because Alan Moore opened the door for them, and he's very ingrained in that community. We mentioned in the Cross episode, he wrote for Cross. Like it's not like he created. And he's like, "Oops, I made a harmless mistake." He is part of that cynical British edgelord community. He created it, and like he's revered more than the others by Darryl and Phil, but he is the originator of that trend.
I would say he's revered more by everybody.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to say, like, you can start a shitty trend and not be as shitty as the rest. Like, I think this is way better than any Mark Millar stuff.
It is, but like I think it's important to paint the picture that he is not separate from the stuff you hate. He's very ingrained into the fibers of the edgelord community, and he's not ashamed of what he's created.
The thing with Alan Moore, too, is I feel like he is... Like, we've talked about it in Swamp Thing when we did Killing Joke. He does a lot of really, really great stuff, but like Mark Millar, he has a lot of tropes that, like... A lot of my first comic books were Alan Moore books, and I was like, he made me, like, love the medium and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, over time, I was like, maybe he's not my favorite.
Yeah, so Mark Millar's trope is cuckolding. Garth Ennis's trope is superheroes get raped and rape people. And Alan Moore is just rape. Just flat out rape. Multiple appearances of rape. Rape is constant. If there's a man and a woman together alone, someone will probably get raped. That is what happens in Alan Moore books. Rape.
Like, in, like, every Alan Moore book. And, like...
There was only one rape in this, right?
But they still talk about it multiple times.
And we should clarify.
Yeah.
So I'm going to paint you the picture of... I was picking the series up as a candidate for Edgelord August. I skipped the first volume. We're reading volume 2 because volume 2 is one of the really edgy shit. The really Edgelord August worthy shit.
Yeah.
But it opens up with...
In the first issue of the first volume.
Yeah, the female lead goes to try to find one of the other leads, and he's opioid addicted, bedridden wreck. And while she's going to visit him, like men outside just come in and start trying to rape her. Like the very first issue, very first page. And then it turns out the Invisible Man, who is a character in the series, also rapes women constantly, and they all think they're being inhabited by the Holy Spirit, and God is having sex with them. So like this series holds off on the rape until the very end, but rape is like ingrained in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when I think extraordinary gentlemen, I think rapists.
To be fair, like this is like a very confused premise because originally, according to Alan Moore, it was supposed to be about these what if every Victorian era fiction was real? Although not ever real, if they were part of like a superhero team. And then,
Which is a really cool concept.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, like, one of the things that kept me really interested in this the whole time I was reading it is, like, every time a new character would show up, they're from some book I'd read before. It's like, oh, The Island of Dr. Moreau, or, obviously, War of the Worlds, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is, like they're one of the main characters.
it is an interesting premise, but I think Alan Moore was the wrong person from his first premise because it's not like a fun action-adventure romp. It is like he has to deconstruct his characters and make it cynical.
Yeah.
And it's even more egregious because he includes horror movie characters. Like you could say like if you have Mr. Hyde and the Invisible Man and Dr. Hyde and Mr. Hyde are members of this team, and they're naturally rapey. But if like somebody else was writing this book, they wouldn't make Mr. Hyde and Invisible Man part of the team. And if they were part of the team, they wouldn't be the rapists like they were in the original stories.
See, what I was thinking when I was reading through this is I felt like Alan Moore was one of the only people I would let do something like this. Like, I was like, I don't know who could do better than him with the premise and having all these people together to make a really,
I think like someone trying to capture the feeling of those books, like George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, would.
No, but they're not action books though. Like
I know, I wish they were. I wish they were.
I would
Okay,
put
but-
Neil Gaiman on this book personally.
yeah, that's a good choice too.
I would rather have somebody who tried to capture the feeling of those old books rather than
Like the adventurous spirit of it.
yes, exactly. Like this is like if he's captured anything, it captures the spirit of Mr. Hyde, the guy who rapes women all the time. And so yes, it captures the spirit of that, but maybe he should have been like that tone should have been the tone for the entire series.
I can see that, but I really feel like all the books it's talking about are all dark, kind of like the Island of Dr. Moreau is really dark. War of the Worlds is really dark.
It's really dark, but then everyone looks like a cartoon character. Like the monsters all look like cartoons, and then like it's really weird tonally. Like I really wish another person who had a more set vision for like a fun adventures book wrote this series instead.
If it's the cartooniness that bothers you, is that Alan Moore or is that Kevin O'Neill, the artist?
But I imagine Alan Moore had to approve it.
Because I just don't know if like not everything needs to be like Guardians of the Galaxy where they're like having a good
No, I'm not saying
time.
he does.
Like...
I'm saying I don't like the book overall. I'm kind of okay on. I think it could have been better if it was more actually about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and like Alan Moore like tried to write differently from what he usually writes for once in his life.
So, Ryan, when you point out Kevin O'Neill, the artist, I love his art. I thought it gelled so well with Alan Moore's vision. Like, there was a lot of pages as I was flipping through the books that, like, I was just captivated by, and I really like to examine the intricacies of. And I feel like the exaggerated style that he does with the characters, like when he shows just a whole bunch of British random commoners, like I just love seeing how exaggerated and wacky and silly they are when juxtaposed against like the kind of serious, austere tone of the book.
I love the sex scene.
The thing that I really like about this art is this book came out in 2004, and to me it's much more in line with the like late 80s British invasion style comic book art. Like this, I could see this being like a late 80s early 90s book. I was actually surprised that it came out so much later, and I think the artist does fit with Alan Moore. I was just asking that question for Sly.
I was shitting on him. I don't like how he draws the monsters in Island Dr. Moreau. As a big fan of that story, but I do think everyone else is great, and I think he is a great fit for this book. Otherwise,
Okay, cool. So we are reading the second volume.
Yeah,
Yes.
Speaking of crazy art, how does this start out?
all right. First, let's just quickly go through team members: Mr. Hyde, rapist; Invisible Man, rapist.
Well, no, yeah, okay, you're really hammering on this point, but.
Mr. Hyde is like his reason why he gets interested in the team is like he's raping a bunch of people, and the team has to go find him and stop him. Like you can't say no. Stop! Don't be too harsh on the rapist.
No, Darryl just recently read the first volume, so why doesn't he introduce the team?
Yeah, so the team is put together by like this, this shadowy government British organization because these people work for the Brits, and it's Mina Murray from Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Allan Quatermain from like the whole series of British adventures that he's in, Captain Nemo from 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Hyde, of course, and the Invisible Man. Yes. And they're all put together, and in the first book they have to stop Moriarty. Who's
Sherlock Holmes' like rival
nemesis. Yeah, and I feel like this is like Phil, this was part of the appeal is there was so like he adds so many other characters in from like they'll just name drop the characters, or he'll drop like a hint, or you'll see like a note that says like from this character, and because I'm really bad with my classics, I had no idea who a lot of these people were.
Yeah, I have to admit I was the same.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, but it's cool, like just existing in this world where there's all these important figures. Like it feels like there's more depth there.
Yeah, and these are like all really like formative novels for English literature. Like it's really cool seeing how many of them all like you're saying exist in the same world together. And if you do get the references, like even if they're not a main part of the plot, like you said, just having it there is cool because it's like all those crazy, wacky things could all exist in this world that people just don't know about, really. Like, maybe people don't know vampires are real and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Reading this, I got to feel like Phil and Darryl when they read like a big superhero comic where I'm like, there's a lot of characters here. I'm sure I'm supposed to know who they are, but I don't.
Yeah. It really
I think that
does.
aspect of it made me dislike it more because I find the world more interesting than the way Alan Moore presents it. But example of that is the first issue where Gulliver is a spaceman apparently, and he's on Mars.
Oh, from Gulliver's Travels. That makes sense.
Yeah, so
I thought that was really cool too.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so this is
retroactively.
the reason why I'll say like the first issue. Let's rush over it because it has anything to do with anything. Because it actually is what the book should have been. A very adventurous kind of out there premise. Like Gulliver is a spaceman out in space. He's finding out that on Mars, Mars from World of the Worlds, H.G. Wells' World of the Worlds, I think.
Yeah.
Also, most of his dialogue, I don't know if this is Alan Moore's flaw as a writer, it's incomprehensible as if it was written in some sort of Martian language.
Yeah, it's specifically written with like a Martian text, so you can't tell what's happening, but he still includes it like it's non like.
Oh, that was a joke. I thought it was interesting and fun to follow.
I have to clarify because again, some people may not have read this or will ever read this, so they'll just think that his writing's bad, and it's not. It's just written in Martian.
Yeah.
So basically, the aliens are going to invade Earth, and that's last
Well,
time.
first, I wanted to say like they start out with a huge war between the different alien races, and
Yeah.
it is off the wall. Like
Yeah.
they're getting slaughtered by these like lizard dinosaur people, and then these big tall
They're not getting
dudes with like
slaughtered. They
lanterns.
ride the lizard dinosaur people to the mollusk center in which they fight the tripods from War of the Worlds.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
And so we never see any of this stuff again. Gopher never shows up again. And we cut to Earth for next issue.
But it's such nice. Like I really, if this issue is mostly just a filler issue showing you the tripods who are going to be the main villain of this arc, and it's the way it's drawn. It's very unique. It's like space Arabic in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Like Dune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very pulp
definitely.
sci-fi from like 50s and stuff like that. As I said, I wish the rest of the book was like this. I don't even get why Gulliver and the other ones don't show up later on to just be like, hey, let's help Earth. They just never show up again.
I think it's just setting it up. It is a filler issue, but this is like my preferred filler. Of like it at least entertains you like greatly. While
It at least glimpses into another part of the world. Like it piece the world a bit.
Yep.
And when I read this, I was like, wait, I kind of pushed to do this for Edgelord August. Was I wrong? Because this is cool and not edgy at all.
Yeah, so now we get to edgy stuff because now we get to our Edgelord characters, at least the two Edgelords and the people around them.
I think the tone is a little edgy, just in the sense that everyone is so stone faced as people like innocent people die, except Captain Nemo. Basically, everyone is just like, I guess people of London are getting slaughtered. Like that's life.
Yeah, it's a very cynical book.
Yeah.
Yes, so the League are called to like a crash landed spacecraft.
And by spacecraft, it basically looks like the tip of a bullet, just like
Yeah.
slammed into the earth.
And the alien starts like evaporating everyone around it. Everyone starts fleeing in terror.
Yeah, we have the main tripod mass, which is like these gooey, like they look like big alien brains with a lot of tentacles around them, and they fall down onto the ground because Earth's gravity is heavier than Martian gravity, so they can't move. And instead, they just have their robots come out and like with a heat beam, it just melts everyone that's looking at like the alien menace from above.
Also, James Bond is there.
Was that James Bond? I wasn't sure. If it's a guy
No.
named-
Camp on Bond's different from because I think
He's
that's
not
what I
James
thought.
Bond?
Yeah.
he's an original character. Because I was looking these guys up, I was like, who are they?
I wish that like this might seem dumb, but I wish this book was a bit more fan servicey than it is. Like
No, but he talks about like the new M, and he talks about MI6.
Yeah,
I think this is supposed to be at least a James Bond like Victorian era version of
I
I
was
it.
think
confused
M
about
is
that,
Mycroft. I believe
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
So, like,
Holmes'
It
brother.
Yeah.
was Moriarty. That was the twist in the first book, is M stood for Moriarty, not Mycroft, and then Mycroft ended up taking it over after.
Was Sherlock in the first book at all?
No, and I like that you did that because Sherlock is you'd almost picture him like the Superman of the series, where it's like he can solve any kind of like thing, and it's left unknown what his fate is after his duel.
That's what I mean, because like I wish there was like Van Helsing, Sherlock Holmes. I wish it went like more fan servicey. Like I wish it went like the fucking titans of these genres. Like
Yeah,
together.
I feel like we're on a spectrum, and you want to pull it in a direction in which I would criticize it more if that happened.
Yeah, and it's in the direction where I criticize it. I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
now you have to deal with a book where I'm like, this is so my style, and you're like, this isn't enough.
Yeah.
I'm so mad because I thought I got a reference. I was like, it's not a high literature, but it's just some dumb action schlock character that I know. Nope, it's not James Bond. Fuck
I was
me.
confused. I did think the same thing at first, but I'm like, this is totally not the right time period. Like, is this,
And that would be cool too if they introduced like Bond. Like people always have that theory that Bond is a code name. If there's a Bond from the Victorian era, I would love that. Like,
I mean, that could be what that is. Why
It could-
he does
yeah.
it. Yeah.
all right, so I have to clarify real quick. when we say Mr. Hyde, he isn't just like a rapist. He's also like more rapey Hulk, basically. Like Ultimate Mark Millar Hulk. I'm pretty sure.
No, but he talks like in full sentences. He has like a
But
personality.
when I
as a
say Hulk,
character.
I mean he's superpowered, super strong.
Yeah, he's really big and muscular, and like he is like he says he's a beast, but he's not stupid.
Yeah.
So he's like Grey Hulk, right, guys?
He's a Grey Hulk.
Isn't that right?
He's just the man's Jekyll's inner demons unleashed, and he gets unleashed when the aliens evaporate everything, and all the league is like, what do we do now? And they all go to a nearby place to hang out while everything is in chaos, and they're all like Mia is like freaking out to talk about like how she feels so small because like now the aliens are out there, and
Yeah, it's like how you look up into the sky and the stars and you feel like, oh, I wonder what's out there. Now it feels like very oppressive because you're like, oh, people that want to kill us are out there.
She said, I used to look at the night sky as like a blanket protecting us, and now it's just like fear of the unknown.
And there's they talk about how they're fucked. How are we gonna fight these aliens during the night? Mia goes to visit Mr. Hyde, and Mr. Hyde talks to her very somberly, saying,
I want to rape you.
Basically, I want to rape you, but he says like, I want to rape you specifically because you're not afraid of me as much as everyone else is because you saw somebody worse. A reference to her and Dracula, because she was the one bitten by Dracula in the original story.
This scene is so weird because like I get what he's trying to do character-wise, where it's like you're supposed to feel for him I don't know if you're supposed to feel for him, but like...
You are.
It feels like Alan Moore's trying to make him feel deep, but I don't think it feels earned. Like,
yeah, because he's supposed to be saying, like, you know, I'm a monster, but you actually, like, you don't hate me, and I don't hate you, so, like, our dynamic is, like, you know, like, our dynamic is more interesting than usual, where everybody just, like, treats me just like a monster. But he also, like... calls black people darkies, and then he says like, I should just rape you, but I won't for now, you better leave before I do it. And I'm like, am I supposed to
the thing is, if it is the inner demons of Hyde or Jekyll, it's like it's his racist tendencies, it's his, you know.
No, I get that.
I know, but like how what Brian's saying is like he doesn't know how he's supposed to feel about Hyde. Like it just feels like he's trying to make him nuance without actually adding any nuance to him. He's just like, I have nuance.
I felt like there was nuance at it. It can get weird, especially with this book, because it focuses so much on kind of making him sympathizable, where he's not a sympathizable character. But I feel like this scene was really earned coming off of the first volume, in which Hyde was just a monster, and there gets to a point where they want to leave without him, and Mina says, no, we have to wait. We have to make sure that he comes with us, kind of a deal. So I felt like when it finally got here, it's like, well, it would make sense that he would actually sit down and talk to her, and because in the beginning, like, I'm just gonna kill and rape everyone type of deal, but it felt like he was getting calmer as the series was progressing, especially since we don't see like Jekyll for this entire book. It's just like it's become all Hyde.
That's very fair, because like I'm definitely biased against this because I haven't read the first volume in a really, really long time. And also, like, whenever I read an Alan Moore book, I'm, like, counting down for the rape. Yeah. So when he brings it up, I'm just like, don't do this. So, like, I could see, like, in this scene, it definitely makes sense.
It felt like in Watchmen when they're talking, when what was it, Silk Spectre's mom talking about how you can't understand her relationship with the comedian. It's very complicated. I'm like, no, it's not. He fucking raped you, and you like it's like it feels like it's kind of gross in a lot of ways.
But like when I read Watchmen first, and when I reread Watchmen, like I still have that like first time reading perspective where like I'm not looking for the Alan Moore rape tropes, so it works a lot better than here where he's just like, you know, I'm just gonna talk about rape because like I'm Alan Moore.
The Invisible Man, since he's invisible, sneaks over to the aliens. It says drawing symbols in the sand.
I think this is really cool.
I also I want to say that I like his design a lot. When he's with the group, because he's invisible, he like wraps bandages around his body.
That's a classic Universal like look he has, the all bandaged look.
Yeah,
it's cool.
So the Invisible Man like draws in the sand stick figures, like a globe with a stick figure man on it, and a globe with a circle, I should say, not a globe. A circle with like a makeshift alien on it.
It's supposed to be Earth, but like Earth's flat.
Oh yeah.
What's up with that? Fucking globe heads.
Well, it's flat here too, actually.
Oh, it is on a page.
Gotcha.
So basically, it's like he's like trying to make the point that I'm with you. My stick figure's next to yours. Now I'll be standing next to you. I will help you. Basically. Try to get basically he's going to betray them, and I should also know
he's going to betray humanity. He wants to rule alongside the big brain people.
Yeah, because they all think they're fucked. And the narrator Al Moore writes in a very like Victorian like style, saying, "Ah, youthful reader, would that thine eyes were plucked out from thy heads, ere they to witness this treachery. Be sure to purchase our next number, or we guarantee our horrors more pogs still."
It really does feel like a Victorian Stan Lee, and I do like that a lot. To end
I like it a lot too.
But I feel it's more appropriate if the book was less serious. But
Also, this was an interesting like twist because throughout the first book, the Invisible Man works with them, but it's very clear, like he makes it known early on when he's talking to Mina at one point, that he is a straight up misanthrope. He thinks humanity is disgusting, and he's with the one where it's like, I wish they were invisible and not me. This was interesting because I never knew when, because he tried to betray them once before, but they found out and they're like, hey, don't do that. And he's like, you got it. I didn't know if this was supposed to be like him faking it, but no, he is serious. He is going to give the Earth to these aliens, which I thought was interesting, because he is like a monster on the inside.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times too, like they make jokes with like Nemo talking to Hyde, where it's like it can be like kind of like light and fluffy, but at the core of it, this guy is this is someone you want to kill. You don't want this person around.
The Mr. Hyde and the Invisible Man are both actual monsters from monster movies. Like, the Invisible Man is the villain of the Invisible Man movie. Like, he is the one everyone has to kill because he goes insane. So it makes sense, the bad guys on the team.
You know, it's really interesting that they can't see his motivations, because, I don't know, I thought this character you could see right through.
So the army shows up to the another crater spot. They're, using cannons and artillery, and they're like, we got them, chaps. And it seems like artillery kind of works on them a little, but they still have this like heat beam. So when they peek their head out, they just burn all the soldiers to death. And it's like Darryl said before, some of the pages are really like crazy. Like, just there's like this green glow as they're being incinerated and stuff.
Yeah, and there's a horse is being lifted up and engulfed by flame.
Yeah, really crazy shots. And the group is wondering, like, how did they burn all our artillery positions so accurately and so quickly? Like, without, like, they must have known where all of them were.
And then their house starts on fire, and they're like, "Oh, if we didn't get out of that like in a few minutes, we would have been dead too." That's weird.
And the Invisible Man's like, "They must just be really smart."
Well, I like that they note that when they got up, the Invisible Man was already up.
Yeah. Like, he's obviously giving them the artillery positions. Their driver shows up. What's his fucking name?
Is he a character from a book?
He has to be. Anytime they sit there and they're like, when they give them a name, that's always a character from a book.
Yeah, I'm looking if they give this guy a name.
They do.
I don't know if they give him a name, but they do always keep like emphasizing like when Mr. Hyde threatens him later on, he's like, "I face much worse than you. I am a character from a book you definitely have never read."
I don't know.
William Sampson.
now me and Ryan are the scrubs who can't.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys don't know William Sampson? What idiots! Like, come on.
William Sampson, British novel. He's a British novelist and short story writer.
He's an author.
Yeah, he's an author. Maybe he was a self-insert fanfic writer.
Well, anyway,
if like a Victorian era reader is listening to us, he's gonna be like ripping their hair out, saying, "What the fuck? Who doesn't know William Sampson? You fucking frauds!"
Oh,
definitely.
He's the Wolf of Kabul, who's appeared in over 100 stories in various story papers from 1922 to 1972. It's Bill Sampson.
So he's like Sid from Final Fantasy. He just shows up all the time.
That's cool.
I guess so.
So a lot of the narration in this chapter is done through like letters or journals.
It's Mina's journals that she's writing.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how they get to London and everyone's in chaos. Even like apparently this like heat beam can hit like miles away. So they get called over to
Bond's office. Is like museum.
James Bond.
Yeah, maybe. Some Bond.
Fat Bond.
And they're basically just planning like what to do, and the league is like, it sounds like an invasion, and they're like, oh, don't say that because then people are gonna panic. We just gotta evacuate the city.
They tell like a couple of them, it's like, hey, go back there and still support and watch over the crater position. And then Bond says to Mina that like study over our artillery plans of where all of our artillery is going to be, like our military plans. So he gives that to her as a task.
Yeah, and she's also the one who figures out that the reason they're having trouble moving is because Mars's gravity is lower, and that's why blah blah blah. Some of the group splits up. Hyde goes to
he goes with the with Allan Quatermain and Nemo back to the
creator.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is where they meet, and the driver, Bill Sampson or whatever.
Yep.
And this is where they meet the first milk stool.
Which is a tripod that Allan Quatermain calls a milk stool.
Which I like, because, like, why would they have a tripod?
Yeah,
Yep.
it makes perfect. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah. And it's another really cool splash page where it's just like knocking down all these trees, grabbing things with the tentacles in the middle of the road. And they're like, what the fuck? Or
Well, Hyde says God's balls.
Yeah. And then we cut back to Mina, left alone in the headquarters. She's studying the maps, and she's like...
This is done in a very Alan Moore... Like, I didn't really put it together until I was reading this book after having read Killing Joke and Watchmen. And I don't know how present this was in Swamp Thing, but he really, when he's like given stuff to do, he really loves his pages with no text, where it's 9 individual boxes on a page.
Yeah, the 9-panel grid.
Yep.
And so she's like... Yeah, she's looking at the map. She's yawning. She goes over to the window. She's looking at stuff at the
Very
museum.
cinematic, builds a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And she goes over and she sees a chair. She sees some clothes on it. She sees some bandages on it. She picks up the bandages and she's like, Griffin? And he's looking at the artillery plans. And
he's invisible.
He's invisible because he took all his bandages and clothes off.
Yeah.
And basically, he just spends the next few pages brutalizing her.
Yeah, this is another typical Alan Moore style. Woman
Yeah.
getting brutalized multiple panels.
So I actually was like, he's definitely gonna rape her, and then he didn't, and I was surprised. But then later on, her inner monologue is, it wouldn't even have been more embarrassing if he raped me. It's just as bad. And I'm like, okay, fine, I guess.
Why'd you
Alan
bring
Moore.
it up?
Why'd you have
Yeah.
to do that?
Well, it's hard because... not to try and like sympathize with him too much, but he's trying to write that she says that because basically that he made her beg, because she has to say, look up to me and tell me you're a stuck-up little tart, because the Invisible Man's an asshole that doesn't like her, because she's rude to everyone in the league, because everyone's basically like, they're all man children. So she's like, none of you can like do anything. You need me to do stuff. And so this is the Invisible Man taking it out on her. And she says during that dialogue that he made her grovel, and that was the worst thing that ever happened. And even as like the world's like going to hell around her, she just has this one line of like, he made me grovel.
For someone who went through Dracula, I have trouble like imagining.
I completely understand that. Like, he took away my dignity. He left me like heaved over in a pile of my own vomit. Like, I get what she's saying. It's just like, again, it's my bias against Alan Moore's style when he's just like, it would have been just as bad if he raped me.
Like,
you know?
I think that line should have just been cut off. I think you can you can emphasize the fact that it's bad enough that he made me grovel, not that he like beat her up and made her throw up and put her face in her own puke.
Yeah.
Which I was like, this is all like so excessive.
Yeah, it's pretty graphic. Like
Yeah.
as he's hitting her in the stomach, she starts throwing up. And her face is in it. It's really gross. And then the rest of the league, besides Invisible Man, obviously, get back and they find, specifically Hyde finds Mina on the ground, and they're like, "What the fuck? The plans detailing the artillery positions are gone." And Hyde is visibly like extra upset that Mina's hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is a nice touch is everybody else is like, we got to get the plans. Where are the plans? And Hyde only cares about Mina.
Yeah. And it's the only reason why, like, they want revenge, and Hyde only cares about revenge because he wants to get revenge for Mina. Like, he doesn't really care about everything else as much.
He really just wants to fight the aliens, and they won't let him fight the aliens because they're like, you'll die. He's like, I don't care. I want to fight him.
Yeah.
Because he has no restraint, because that's Jekyll.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think they actually do. They talk a lot about the Jekyll and Hyde like paradigm, and it is interesting how they say like without Hyde, Jekyll has no ambition or drive, but without Jekyll, Hyde has no restraint or like thinking.
Yeah.
Yep.
I keep dissing on this book, and it's only because of a few certain elements to it.
Yeah.
But I think Hyde is my favorite part of this book. I always
You
have
like
a
the
soft
Hulk
spot.
character in the book?
Yeah, I was about to say like Jekyll and Hyde is the original Bruce Banner and Hulk.
Yeah.
I know. I fucking love. And I love like because like Hyde insults Dr. Jekyll saying he was like a little pansy boy on like on everything he wished he was. I
Tell me I'm
love,
a pansy.
Yeah. But like this makes me want to read like a Mr. Hyde book by Alan Moore. Like I think it's really. I think in general the character work is really good too. Like Mina was a character I never cared about ever. I was wondering why she's in this book, but I think they do a good job.
Yeah.
Showing her like her as a victim of Dracula makes her she justifies her presence on this team. Like she's not just a damsel in distress.
Yeah,
I mean she's my favorite character in this book.
Yeah, she's my second favorite.
Yeah, she's never like a damsel. She's always doing stuff herself.
Yeah.
Even at the end of the first book, what it is it's Moriarty is going to shoot Allan Quatermain in the head, and she saves him.
Oh, interesting.
After this whole affair, they Captain Nemo and Hyde are gonna
they're gonna go into Captain Nemo's water metal octopus.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's like this Kraken submarine, and then Mina and Quatermain are supposed to go to this secret doctor in the woods and get H-142.
Well, we already said it's Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
The secret doctor. It's cool though because at this point you only know it's a secret doctor as like a shifting base, so you're excited to see. It's like what is it going to be this time?
Yeah, at one point they call him like the Devil Doctor,
and I'm like, what is H-142?
And I think it's interesting because Dr. Moreau is not inherently obvious how he would have a solution to stop the aliens, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And so as they, they're talking, like the milk stools are spreading, more of them keep landing. And we're fucked. And Alan Moore says, Lord love us, can our nation's doughtiest defenders quell the influx of these queerly behaved foreign devils who show no sign of attempting to adapt to our time-humored English way of life?
So, issue 4 starts with a train. They're evacuating London, and there's all these, like, really posh Englanders that are like, oh, what's the big deal? And then the milk stools show up and just completely fucking destroy everything.
This was one of those like edgelord moments where I could see Millar reading this and being like, oh, this is awesome, all the death and destruction.
Yeah, a little kid sees like his family die in front of him.
Not just his family die, like his dad like has like a big piece of metal sticking out of his skull.
Yeah, and I was wondering, the kid gets saved by Captain Nemo's octopus submarine as it fights the aliens. But
and this actually is a really cool effect because he gets saved because the submarine comes up out of the ground. I mean, out of the water that he's like drowning in, and he's just standing on it.
Yeah, and I wonder if this was a character, but
I looked up this kid, and I think he's just in this book.
Yeah, I was wondering, is this Tom Sawyer or something? Like, what is it?
Because he says like, I want to be a captain of a ship one day. And I was like, this gotta be somebody.
That's American.
Yeah. But Captain Nemo, I know Captain Nemo is British literature, but he's an Indian character, and so is
British India, you know.
Yeah, okay. He's one of ours, says Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So they save the kid, and this is when Hyde's edginess started to like grate on me a little bit. So they save the kid, and Hyde's like, I'll give him something to cry about. And Nemo's like, he's only a child. And he's like, I know what children look like. I've often scraped them off my boots. And I'm like, okay, calm down.
I've murdered children, sucker.
Also, I really love the page of the Nautilus surfacing and blowing up one of the tripods with a cannon. Like,
it's pretty awesome.
It's a really cool ship.
Yeah, O'Neill's a good artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they save the kid, and they're like they're on like the fight, the front lines, and then it cuts to Quatermain and Mina in this like big open field, and they're just like talking for a little bit, and he's trying to get her to talk about like how he's really cynical, and she's just like, let's just try to enjoy ourselves, like even though it's scary and terrible, we still like are in, it's still like we're out in the woods, it's a beautiful world, and they're looking for the doctor.
So I find a crazy guy, and he basically talks about how there's animal people, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, they look closer to animals, the animal people.
He looks a little bit like the Mad Hatter from the Batman animated TV series.
He does.
He really does.
I like also speaking of the character work, like when Captain Nemo and Hyde are on the Nautilus together and talking, like Nemo has such disdain for Hyde, like he basically would kill him if he wasn't part of the team.
Yeah, he tries to kill him later on.
Yeah, he tries to kill him. And like when they save the kid and Hyde is making comments about it, he's like, protecting the innocent is our work, creature. And Hyde's like, no, killing Marsmen, that's our work.
Yeah, which really hammers home why he likes Mina the most, because Mina's the only one that isn't like, go fuck off and die.
Yeah.
Also, Nemo's my favorite character.
Yeah.
I like him.
He's so rad.
Who's your favorite character, Phil? Everyone else has different favorite characters.
That shows how good the character work is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not Quatermain, so I'm sorry.
I will say, I was gonna say, I do like the character work on Quatermain and Mina, because Mina in the first issue she talks about how she read Quatermain's adventures as a child, and she grew up with them.
Oh yeah.
And then she kind of met him, and he was kind of like a opioid, drug addicted fuck, and like even here he's like a whiny old man complaining all the time. So like he's kind of in a letdown to her perception of him as this heroic figure. So I kind of find it interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Quatermain and Mina go to a hotel to stay, and they're pretending to be a married couple. So Mina's like, I guess we gotta fuck now because we're a married couple. And Quatermain's like, what? And she starts undressing in front of him.
It's kind of an interesting scene because she is very, like, in control of it the whole time, where she's like, oh, like, you've never undone a corset before? And he's like, oh, but, like, you're so young and I'm, like, so old.
Yeah. And when he takes off his pants, and, like, he is really old. Like, he has a raggedy old man body. And
Yeah, scars all over him.
Yeah, you see more details than you want to. And Mina is just, like, a hot young girl. And they fuck.
They fuck, and at the same time, it intersperses pages of like London burning down from these tripods, and them boning down.
Yeah, which like
Yeah.
I really like the idea. Like I understand why he wants to put in this idea. Where, you know, if the world is ending, you're kind of gonna probably want to bone someone one last time, you know, even if like they're a work associate and stuff. It's just
Well, she says, like, when I was a girl, I used to, like, read your books by candlelight and fantasize about you. Which, like, so I said, it was established earlier. It's not just, like...
I never saw their relationship in a kind of sexual tension mode within the first book. Even though more was kind of building up to be that, and that they hate each other so much that everyone else sees that they like each other kind of way.
But I think that's why, spoilers, they break up after this. I think it was just the fear of they're gonna die. So it's
okay,
fuck.
yeah.
I also like the going back to the cool war stuff. Like when London's getting burned down, they're using the Thames River as like a moat, and Nemo's like, if we can't evacuate everyone, we just have to blow up the bridges with people on them because we can't let the tripods get into the city.
Yeah,
and it shows how dire everything is. Like they're basically like, we're fucked.
Yep, it shows the Invisible Man talking to the tripod, the alien tripods, and he's telling them, it's like, you gotta do something. I've been on this boat. I know there's a boat underneath the river blowing you all up. You need to do something about it. Or submarine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And an important point during the sex is Mina asks Quatermain to bite her neck, and he does so. And afterwards, he sees her neck, and she's all covered with bite marks. And she says, he's like freaked out about it visibly. So Mina gets upset, saying, "I see. Not quite the two discrete puncture marks of legend, are they? Good night, Mr. Quatermain." So like you can see, like,
because she normally wears a scarf around her neck, even when they're boning, and it just slips off.
Yeah, so like you could tell she's very self-conscious about the fact that Dracula just fucked up her neck massively.
One thing I just want to point out about the sex scene is, first they really showcase how old he is, because he's like, I can't even do it, and she's like, I'll take over, don't worry.
And she gets on top of him, and
we've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
She tells him to bite her shoulder because she's wearing her scarf the whole time, and then afterwards, that's when
he sees her neck. I'm sorry, yeah, I fucked up that detail.
Later on, before they go to bed, that's when he sees her neck. But then, so the final panel, when she says, like, not the two discrete puncture marks, like you said, good night, it's both of them laying there with, like, wide, terrified eyes, with the caption, "Gaze, child, on the unhappy fornicators in their sorry bed of sin, and resolve to learn from their shameful example. Should this dismal moral lesson fail to persuade you to lifelong abstinence, fear not, for there shall be another such fierce instruction in our next socially responsible number."
That is
what a
great.
Weird thing to say.
Wait, maybe that's
pretty
we
great.
we always theorize why Mark Millar got cucked. That's why he has this cuckolding. Maybe Alan Moore really hates sex, so he has to paint as an ugly, filthy thing. So people read it and they're like, I don't want to do this ever. Like, God damn it.
There's also, while they're laying there with their white eyes, there's just only the Bible sitting there.
Yeah,
but it could be just a Victorian era thing.
That's what I'm thinking, because all the rest of these, like, every issue ends with, like, trying to build you up for the next one, but all it spouts is, like, one of them was about, like, great British values and stuff.
I do think it's ironic, but I wouldn't be surprised if Alan Moore has sex issues too.
I think, if anything, he really likes it. Because he loves using sex in his books.
The other thing that ends the issue is the Invisible Man is meeting with the brain people again.
And what's cool too is I think, like, they don't have to show you like, and now they're going to do this to the river. It just, you see him saying, hey, there's a problem with the submarine that's stopping you, and then the next issue opens up with the whole Thames River filled with this like red tentacle goo.
It's like a weed, I think they call it.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then there's men without like hatchets trying to hack it down as the weeds are coiling around their legs and stuff.
It's true what they say. Weed kills.
And
Alan Moore hates weed and sex.
It's a very striking image too. It's like almost a river of blood is seeing the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. And the sailors cutting it down are all like in this like bright navy blue.
Yeah.
And not
Navy blue?
Navy blue's dark, but I mean like their sailor outfit blue.
They're in the Navy, though.
I know.
Any blue they wear is Navy blue.
That's why I said it, but then I'm like, people are going to think it's dark blue. So what kind of blue is this, Darryl? What do you think?
It's like a cerulean.
Ultramarine blue?
Yeah.
Royal blue.
It doesn't matter, guys.
Wait, they're Marines? I thought they were Navy sailors.
Oh my god, that's fucking wrong.
Okay, enough of this. So Hyde says to him, like, he's talking to Nemo. Hyde's all dressed up, and he's like, I'm going to go back to the museum where Mina was beat up. And Nemo's like, why would you do that? Like, the Invisible Man knows that we use that as our base of operations. It might be, like, a trap if you go back there, and that's, like, Hyde's whole point, is he knows. And, while this is going on, it cuts back to Mina and Quatermain talking about it, and Quatermain apologizing for his reaction and saying that he wasn't shocked like out of disgust. It was shock out of the fact that his second wife Stella was the most striking, remarkable woman he had ever known, and she had been caught in a fire and had dreadful scars that were all around her throat as well. And then he uses the romantic line of like, he wasn't repelled, he was amazed that destiny should so distinguish the two women I have loved the most. And then she's like, bang me. Well, actually, no.
He starts licking her neck, saying,
Yeah.
"They're part of you, part of your body, part of your past, who you are. There's no part of you that's not beautiful." And she's like, "Oh God, please do me now."
Well,
Alan."
the thing is, okay, I will defend this because I do really like the fact that she's like, this is my biggest shame. It's the thing I hide all the time. And he's like, no, I think it's beautiful. And he like embraces it and he kisses her neck. And she's like really taken by that. And then the only thing that's weird is then the next panel, he's like really licking it. He's like, ooh. And like, that makes it a little weird. But like, I do really like the idea where she's like, I cover this up all the time. And like, I'm ashamed of it. And he like loves that about her too. And it becomes like a real like
bonding
spot
moment
for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he does say it's a necklace decorating her breasts. And then he says, I want to fuck you. It's
Yeah.
So,
Then
like,
she
okay.
says, what? Here? Among the trees and the wild animals? As if I were some native girl? I quite forbid it.
I also
And
like
then they bang.
They tease like some backstory because she says her husband wouldn't touch her after he saw him. So that explains why Jonathan and her aren't together in the story.
Oh, yeah, it's a good detail, actually.
Yeah.
So they try and start banging, and then a bear comes up behind them.
they start banging.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And a bear comes up, a bear
He's
man.
about to finish. He says like, "I'm not gonna last much longer." Oh, you mean I'm coming? Literally,
Okay,
I'm not
yeah, a
joking.
bear man comes up behind them that's like kind of cartoonish. I realize he's dressed like Rupert, the old cartoon bear.
This is what I mean by totally weird because all the animals, they look like something like it felt like they're trying to evoke like a fairy tale animals.
Yeah.
They're dressed in like very cutesy.
I think
Like
I think-
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, I think
style.
they're
Yeah.
probably evocative of Alice in Wonderland cartoons. The fact that this guy looks exactly like Rupert the Bear was like my tip-off that he was combining Moreau's Island of Animals with like cartoon animals and stuff.
Which is I think it would make sense if this is more like a cutesy book, but it's weird in this book, especially since the way these are created is a typical chopping them up and merging the parts together, like in the original Moreau story.
Yeah, but I like, you don't think there's anything interesting about the derangement of that you cutify them after they've turned into like these monsters?
But the thing is, I feel like Alan Moore does this like so often. Like it's like he can't do it. Like he can't make a fairy tale story. Like he has.
Are you thinking about Lost Girls, the like weird teen porn
like
book?
that.
he
Like
made?
he either can't do this like as it is. He has to make it dark and disassemble it and make it gritty. Like I don't know. Like if you like, it's like one of those things where we read a writer enough, you could tell this is all they can write, and like I could tell this is all Alan Moore can do with these stories is make them dark and gritty, and he does it well. So I should clarify, he does it well.
But he always does it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I think when
I
you're
can see
really
that.
familiar, like same thing like I was saying before, when you're really familiar with a writer's kind of like style, it takes you out of it when you like remember this isn't just some fantasy world I'm a part of. This is a guy wrote this.
Yeah, I can see that. Sort of like anytime there's cucking, even if it's plot-centric cucking in Millar books, I'm always just like, yeah, there it is. Got it.
Yeah. But in this scene we do get like a classic like raunchy teen comedy joke where she's like screaming and he's like, "Ooh, you're so into it. This is so good." She's, "No, you idiot.
Yeah,
There's a
Quatermain
weird
is.
bear monster."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Yeah, they're gonna kill me. Run! I'll hold them off." And they're just like, the bear is like, "Not to run, not to run."
Yeah, he takes Quatermain easily because he's so feeble. Poor guy.
And this is a big bear man.
And then like a tiger man with a bow tie shows up. He says, "You come us."
And Quatermain says, I already come. I can't come again.
So it cuts back to Hyde in the carriage. He's going back to the museum.
This is a great scene.
There's a whole bunch of like destruction and stuff going on.
And he's
around
wearing
him.
like a full suit too, and he
Yeah.
he has a walking cane. Like he's like he's like the
Dapper.
Hulk as a gentleman.
Yeah.
It's
like-
a striking image because he still walks like that, like gorilla style, where he's
Yep.
like really hunched over and his knuckles are almost on the ground, but it's with a cane, and like I find that really like that is a really striking panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so he goes inside and he starts smelling the air, and he knows that the Invisible Man is inside this place. So he goes into a room, he locks it, he sits down, and it's like, "Oh, this is funny. You don't think I know that you're there." And then it shows a panel of nothing happening. Then he starts laughing and goes, "Oh, now you think that he's bluffing. But I promise you, Griffin, I promise I'm not. You have my word as a gentleman." And that it shows that he can see him because he has like heat vision. And
This was an amazing
in the
twist.
first volume, when the Invisible Man first met him, it showed that he had heat vision, but he said to him, "Where are you? I can't see you." And he kept acting the whole time when he was with him
That's
that he
really
couldn't see
cool.
him. And this is why it was such a good payoff, because it's like, I didn't know where he was going to go with that, because the first volume ends and nothing happens with it, but then here it's like, there you are. And so he grabs him and he just basically starts breaking his bones apart. He slams his face against the window and starts showing him that he sold out the human race. Like, look at all this destruction that you caused.
I do want to say I like when he's like, "I see you, but I walk over to you. I'm gonna break your legs. I'm gonna rape you." Invisible Man's like, "This isn't fair." Mr. Hyde is just like casually. No, I suppose not. Just starts breaking his arms like casually, like whatever. Breaking your arms, breaking your legs. Well, I guess it's your leg.
I really like the way that O'Neill does this because, like, you can't see him at all. You can't see Griffin at all. So he's just, like, holding his hands in weird positions. And, like, there's just, like, glass breaking, but, like, his hand doesn't touch the glass because, like, you know, the invisible head is in the way.
Yeah.
And this time Griffin is begging the whole time and groveling. He's like, "Please, please." And Hyde is like, "Stop saying that, you piece of shit."
Yep, and then he takes off his pants and you can see that he's bending him over. I'm like, oh, boy.
Yeah. Why? It's like a little.
What more could we ask for? Opulent surroundings, fine wines, romance.
Yeah. And he's like, "Hi, what are you doing?"
Do you know? I can't remember the last time I felt so chipper. This is a life, Griffin.
Yeah.
This is a life.
And
As
then he
Invisible Man
screams.
screaming.
Which is like,
At the same time, would Hyde not do that?
Yes,
yeah,
like-
and he established himself within the first volume that he's also a rapist, the Invisible
Yes.
Man. So it's not like
Yeah.
this is a thief that's getting this done to him. This is a man that's taken advantage of women before.
he's comeuppance in a sense.
Yeah, it's like you said, like even the plot centric cucking in Kingsman last episode. Like, yeah, it makes sense and it works, but I'm still like,
Why you always do this?
why you gotta
Why you
do
gotta
this?
be like that, man?
Yeah. So anyway, it cuts back to the island of Moreau, and we got some silliness with all these animals. Like the tiger's licking, and the bear slaps his head and says, "Don't lick on all fours." And then
We're people now.
yeah, and then they follow a frog in a little car. I thought it was really funny and like kind of out of place.
Yeah.
But it's really it's funny until they get to Dr. Moreau, and like Sly said, he's covered in gore, and he's
Blood,
he's
yeah.
chopping these people up, and like there's like dead animals.
Yeah.
It's like it is dark. It's really dark for how silly the characters look.
It almost reminds me, this whole kind of like set kind of reminds me of like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Where I'm
Yeah.
like, these things are cute, but also just horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Courage was always horrifying, never cute.
They were disturbing to me.
Yeah, Alex is like the guy who's like driving them in the car over to a location. He looks like Mr. Toad. The house
Yeah.
looks like a Hobbit house, like it's in the
Oh
little
yeah,
hole.
yeah.
Like it looks so fairy tale. Then they enter the house and like they're chopping off a dog man, and dog man dies because they're cutting up his limbs.
Yeah, he said like making dogs are always hard because you have to break all their legs to get them to stand upright, and they usually don't make it.
Yeah.
And he basically is like, oh, I got the H-142, which is what you need. I'll give it to you because like that the government put him there because they couldn't have him in any other facility because he was just doing gross stuff.
And they keep hyping up like, what is H-142? And Moreau even says, "Are you sure? Like, I take it London is in grave danger then if you need that." But he they don't tell you what it is, and they're like, so the whole time you're like, what kind of animal could this be that could stop these tripods?
It must be what teaches Pokemon Cut, right?
That's HM, Sly.
Close. And the issue ends with Hyde he had Nemo invited him over for dinner, and he starts eating it, and this is where he's telling him about like who Hyde is as a person, that he's a monster, while Jekyll's like a weakling, and that Jekyll like was so afraid of any kind of vices or any kind of sin that he like really tried to repress it.
Yeah, and he says like he was started as a dwarf, but the more like he basically Jekyll's dark side grew more and more. And now he's like, because he was smaller and now he's like the Hulk size basically.
Yep. And as he's explaining this stuff, blood slowly starts to appear more and more on his like his suit.
His hands, his knuckles, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of blood, and he's like, "Oh." Nemo goes, "You're wounded." And says, "No, this isn't mine. This is probably Griffin's," which means he's just passed away this moment in the library. Didn't I mention it? And Nemo runs away to look at it while Hyde talks to the Bill Sampson.
So does he? Is it like implied that he has like pieces of him all over him? Or
yes.
Like...
So when he
I think it's his blood.
Yeah, it's his blood. So we should clarify.
Oh, so when he dies, he stops
blood,
being invisible.
Yeah, the blood all becomes visible. So he beat him, I guess, on this table.
That makes sense.
Or he raped him so hard, blood came everywhere.
This is so much blood. He like ripped. He ate him or something. Like it's all over his mouth.
Okay, because I was like, is the blood coming out of like a leg or something? But that makes more sense that when he dies, it's the blood.
Because I was wondering. I'm wondering like how alive. Because like he kind of timed it because Griffin was still alive as they entered. Like he was on the floor, saying and probably trying to say no, but like stuttering. So he was still alive enough to be alive at that point, but so much blood came out of him. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Nemo gets really mad and calls him the shit of the world.
It's a great visual scene because the table too starts to like just get more and more red as
the table they're eating on, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like he must have bled him all over this table and eaten part of him or something because it's like it's so covered, and as it becomes more and more visible, Hyde just continues to
Guys, remember, this thing can be done for an artistic effect, like of just doing impact. You don't have to think about the logistics of how much blood that is. You know, just
I want to know.
Just saying.
How many pints?
This is another good ending quote. Oh, cripes, can this beastly business possibly get any worse? To learn the admittedly predictable answer to this largely rhetorical question, do not fail to purchase our concluding number, unless, of course, you are a sissy, coward, or girl. And that caption is one of the reasons why I was like, this was a good choice for Edgelord August.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to be Victorian Edgelord.
Yeah, which is hard because it's like you have a little bit of a reason because like differences between the genders was very pronounced and like talked about back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of like you can't do that in like the 2000s type of deal. But then if you're writing, an 1800s book, you can point out the Indian men are darkies and stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
Terrible people. So the next issue opens with them waiting at the train station. Moreau brings H-142. He's like, make sure you don't drop it. And then he leaves. They get on the train.
And they even comment, they're like, what could be in that box? It's really light. And
yep, and they
it's not very
continuously
large.
tease it. Like they get to the London, and Bond's sitting there with like a handkerchief over his mouth. And it's like, it didn't take any damage? And they're like, no, it didn't. And then he's like, okay. And he turns to the guards behind him. He's like, you don't have to shoot us now. And she's like, what? Yeah. Like, why would we have to shoot?
Quatermain's like, maybe it's a dragon.
And the whole plan is to just basically delay the aliens until they can get H1B1, whatever, H1B1 visas out.
H142.
HMO1.
Yeah, HMO1 out. So that's all League of Extermination have to do. They have to delay the aliens.
So there's like one bridge left that they can get through on, and there's like 100 tripods now waiting on the other side of the bridge.
And they keep saying, like, Bond makes it very clear that they've been, like, blowing up bridges even when people are on them because, like, defeating them is more important than protecting anybody's lives.
Bond is always so sweaty and scared looking every panel.
Yeah.
And they say, like they can't, the aliens fucked up their own plan because they can't cross the Thames now because it's covered in that weed.
Yeah. And so now they have this one last bridge, and Hyde's ready to like go on it and basically martyr himself to save everyone. And he lets him know it's like, the Invisible Man's dead. I killed him. And Mina's like, good. I should not like to hear of any creature suffering unnecessarily, even Griffin.
Because he says his end was comfortable.
Yeah.
And then Nemo says, "Spawn of a whore."
And he says, "I have one favor to ask of you, Mina."
Oh,
First he
this
says,
is so weird.
all I want, like, before I go, would you allow me the honor of a kiss? And she's like, oh, Edward, of course I would. And so they kiss, and then afterwards he's like, no, please, one more thing. I won't ask for anything more. I just want to touch your breast. And she's like, if you promise not to hurt me. And then it's just a panel of him holding onto her whole chest because his hand's so big. And he's like thundering so fast. Then he takes away and he's like, oh, I knew that heaven would be the cruelest of all places. And it's like, it's being funny. And I don't want it to be funny because this book is set up like that the Invisible Man and Hyde are monsters that are worthy of death.
Yeah.
And that Invisible Man got his comeuppance. But Hyde also needs his comeuppance. And here at the very last hour, it's like, I'm being sympathetic. Don't you care about me? Won't you allow me this? And it's kind of like, no. Like, he doesn't deserve any of this.
No.
Okay, here's something.
Which is why Nemo's the best character, because he recognizes that.
The thing about Alan Moore is I have read probably a dozen Alan Moore books where he redeems a rapist. It happens in so many books. I don't know if maybe, like, he secretly wants to be a rapist or he doesn't think rape is that bad. I don't know. But I mean, like, time and time again, there are so many books where he's like, either like, the rape wasn't that bad, or like, it would have been just as bad if I got raped, or like, this rapist is showing compassion and like, look, isn't it more nuanced than just he raped somebody?
Yeah.
And like, this scene is kind of the same thing where he's like, grabbing her, but he's like asking consent, which I guess in Alan Moore's world only a monster could do.
Which isn't even like consent when you're a giant monster that rips people apart and you're like, can I touch your breast? And you're like, you got it.
I just ripped the Invisible Man to death. Can I touch your boobs?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's like so much of it is like I feel like he's always setting up these rapist characters and then redeeming them to the point that like what, like why? Like, cuz for me personally, I mean, this is a hot take. I don't think rapists should be redeemed. Like, I think that's like the worst thing.
To defend Alan Moore a bit, after shit him a few times, I will say he writes characters he doesn't like at all very well, and he makes them sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he says, I don't like Rorschach. I hate Rorschach. Rorschach is everyone's standout character from Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
when Alan Moore says he wrote Rorschach to be a bad guy. So, just because he writes it doesn't mean he likes the character.
Yeah, he doesn't condone it.
And I think it's fair to argue though that like we are so easy to accept redeeming mass murderers in comics and fiction in general. We're like, oh, they killed people, they feel bad, but we're like, whoa, you raped someone, like you deserve death forever.
Yeah, it's the important
Like,
thing too is like he stepped on children. He killed the first meet him because he's been killing whores left and right, like ripping them in half.
So it's like I think for me, I'm like I can accept redemption stories in general, and like this, he is worse than most.
Yes.
So I don't know if I'll accept him in particular. But it doesn't mean that every time he tries to do a redemption story, it's necessarily problematic, because we often will be like, this guy murdered a lot of people, but he feels bad about it. Like, we can feel for him. You know what I mean?
Kinda. It depends on like the
I don't
story
know.
and what the character is and everything, and specifically
Yeah.
what the transgression is.
I do agree with Phil though, because most characters in fiction usually commit horrible things, like especially if the story goes on long enough. Like if you read X-Men, most of the X-Men should be war criminals and should be locked up.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
they're like, and you look at anime, like you look at Vegeta blew a planet, and then he becomes a good guy. Like,
Yeah.
and Piccolo's a monster too. Like every fiction has
Not
monsters in
Piccolo,
comics.
King Piccolo, maybe, but
Oh
not
yeah,
Piccolo.
whoa.
That's my asterisk. You leave Piccolo
whatever.
alone.
I don't know. Maybe it's just again like because like it's just like it happens every time.
Yeah.
Like again, it's the writer getting in the way of the story.
I can see that. I really didn't like this turn because I liked the theme he was going with Invisible Man, where basically you get what you deserve, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see that with like Hyde. Even Hyde knew that he was a monster. And it's like I want to see that happen, but instead he gets a heroic death where he marches forward, like singing while he goes to approach a tripod. It looks like he gets incinerated and turns to ash. but instead he gets up as like a burnt naked man, and then he just knocks over the tripod. He goes inside of the skeletal suit it has and just like smashes its head and starts eating it and saying how delicious it is. And then they get a whole bunch of artillery and they fire on him and they blow him up.
Yeah, but they say at least he taught them fear before he died.
And the wreckage of this downed tripod is blocking the bridge now.
Yeah, but I want to say, when I said Mr. Hyde is my favorite character, it is because of what Darryl said, because he is a monster and he recognizes it, and that makes it interesting. I do wish he didn't have a fucking heroic
like a heroic death, where it's just like, oh, he stalled them long enough to give us time to drop H-142.
Yeah. And then they name a park after him.
Yeah. Well, they've considered naming a park after him.
Yeah.
I will say I do like how I don't think, like, he says repeatedly, like, I'm not doing this to like save people. I just wanted to kill this whole time. All I want to do was fight Martians, and now I'm gonna go fight Martians.
But like the narrative redeems.
Yeah, no, I agree. The story does.
Which is the problem when you have like you look at the Invisible Man and it's like you're irredeemable and you get this terrible ending, and then here it's like you get the heroic, you get to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's
really picking sides in this monster face-off.
So it ends with H-142 showing up, and they're like, what hybrid animal is it? And they're like, it's anthrax and streptococcus.
Yeah,
and
it's a hybrid disease.
Yeah, basically anything from the original worlds, common Earth viruses can kill.
Well, they say we're gonna say it's a common cold, but actually we're using chemical warfare.
Yeah. But the same idea, like.
And then Nemo hears this and he's like, I can't, like, this is too much. Britain is so far gone. Like, I'm gonna get in my boat. I'm gonna go away.
He says England has disease bombs, and you have made Nemo party to their use. You are all dogs.
Yeah, Nemo's like, Alan Moore may claim me for England, but I do not claim England for myself. Fuck you.
Yeah, and then it ends with them in the park like months later.
So okay, it's Serpentine Park, which is now in real life called Hyde Park.
Oh,
so this is the secret origin of the name of Hyde Park.
Yeah, all right.
So yeah, they consider it in real life, I guess.
This is the origin story for how actually I named Hyde Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's Allan and Mina together. It's basically that she's like, I gotta go to a ladies' commune in Scotland. I gotta think about some things. Like, this has been a very tough few months for me. And it's like, but like, we love each other, and it's shouldn't we stay together? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, what happened between us was wonderful, but I need time to myself. I need to be sure about my feelings. Don't be angry. Don't make these moments unhappy. Just remember me. And she kisses him, gets in a coach, and goes away. And it ends with just him sitting on a bench in autumn.
Yeah. So, would you guys read more?
I would.
I like more stuff. And I feel like I do need more familiarity so I can start picking out, like Ryan, where I'm like, instead of being like, oh, this is so smart, like Fairyland, like Dark Fairyland, now I can be like, oh, this is just your thing.
Yeah.
I had read volume 1 and 2 and stopped here, like, when I read it years ago, and I really still feel that way, that, like, that's enough, I think, for me. I think, for me, if I would probably like this more if I didn't like the concept so much.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, like, the book itself I liked it more this time than whenever last time, and you guys had a lot of really valid and good points about it. But, like, it still isn't even close to what I want the concept to be.
But the way I look at it is, right now, Universal Pictures is trying to take their classic monster movies and make them into all adventure movies, like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy films and stuff like that. They should get the rights to this and use that as a source material, because this is more appropriate for like the horror heroes teaming up, and they should get the adventure idea. Somebody write the adventure idea and use that for these characters.
Did you watch the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie?
I'm wondering, is the movie that concept?
I've only seen it once, and I remember it being very, like, action gung-ho. I mean,
Same.
It stars Sean Connery.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out. I barely remember it, but
Maybe
I
I
do
see a
remember
movie.
it being
Maybe the
action
movie is what? Maybe ironically, people say the movie is like such a bastardization. Maybe because I'm not a huge fan of how the book.
Maybe
is.
Sly and I'll like it
Yeah,
more.
maybe you guys should watch it.
Yeah.
If you want that as a bonus episode, let us know.
Oh, that's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because it's always considered such a bad movie by fans of the book. Maybe by non-fans of the book will like it.
There's probably less rape in it.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know. Sean Connery has been in pretty rapey movies at points in his life.
Oh boy, but yeah,
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I like Alan Moore's stuff still, and I like it more than 2000's Edgelords. I mean, grant this was like 1999 to
On the scale of
2007.
Edgelord stuff, I like this a lot, but
Yeah.
on the scale of Alan Moore stuff, it's towards the bottom for me.
Sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so for me too.
I think me and Phil were really smitten by what he did, though, just like how he introduced so many of the characters and stuff.
I've liked every Alan Moore thing I've read. It's just
Me too.
It's just like, so when I say this is, I'll agree that this is probably one of my least favorites, but that's like, you know, relative to Alan Moore, I'm like, it's still good. I still
want
like
people. I want to make it clear. I don't think I've read any Alan Moore that I like actively dislike at all. It's just like I feel like I have this knee-jerk reaction where because he's hailed as like he's the comic book writer that writes real literature and not like the rest of the medium, and I think like I have this knee-jerk like, well, that's kind of bullshit kind of response. You know what I mean?
Especially like since me and Ryan know like Neil Gaiman and Garth Ennis and other writers who don't get as much accolades as Moore, but
Neil Gaiman gets accolades. I mean,
Yeah.
but like, have you guys read Neil Gaiman yet?
I've read American Gods, the book by him, and I was hot take. I was not impressed.
It's nowhere near as much as Alan Moore. Alan Moore is like the tight, and then Neil Gaiman is like second place, and then Grant Morrison and Peter Milligan are like not even in the same tier as that.
Yeah, and like I just know so many people that have like only read Alan Moore comics and been like, I don't, you know, comics don't do it for me, but Alan Moore's the exception, and it's like, you know.
Oh, Phil, you should know how this feels because you hate Harry Potter because everyone says I don't read books, but I like Harry Potter.
I don't hate Harry Potter.
You said it to me. I hate Harry Potter because
He can change his mind on these things.
I know, but I'm saying like you felt this way at some point. You can't say this feeling is alien to you, Phil.
I understand the idea. And it's just like one of those things. Like I can also understand being like, you see a bunch of comics all the time and you're like, oh god, it's just more superhero schlock, and then you read Watchmen and you're like, oh, that is very different than
Like me.
anything else. Yeah, like I was so impressed with Watchmen where I was not with most comics. And it's not to say that they're less good, but they're very, like, Alan Moore's books are very different than
I think that's like a big thing because especially like Sly and Ryan want more of, I think, what we probably don't want from comics in it, Phil.
I think me and Ryan have read a lot of this style book, so we're not starved for it. Like in fact, this type of books have bled.
But it's
into
weird to
other
be
books.
starved for just like not to be rude, but generic adventure, perhaps.
No, not generic adventure. Like fun
Pulp.
The thing is, like
that's
the
every
thing
comic though. They're always
Yeah.
fun. They're always
Yeah.
fun.
No, it's not because every book we always point out like we read a book and like it'll be fun for most of it, but most books we point out are totally consistent because they're influenced by Alan Moore. Like what was it, like the Rand story, the Joker and the Rand story. There's more books like that nowadays where you can see the influence of Alan Moore bleeding, and there's less more pure fun books. Like,
And I think I agree with Sly completely on that because like Alan Moore's cynicism and like Frank Miller's cynicism when they like revamped comics in the late 80s became such like a toxic infection that even though when I read an Alan Moore book, like for like stuff like Watchmen was the first comic book I read, and it's still one of my favorite books ever. But like the whole like let's deconstruct everything and be like, but what if everyone was a piece of shit? Kind of like fucked up the medium forever. That like it's not fair to judge Alan Moore for that, like on its face, but the fact that he kept doing it over and over and over again, like kind of, I don't know. It's just like it always forces me to be like to have that asterisk when I talk about why Alan Moore is great.
yeah, and people like casual fans like you and Darryl, you're so starved for stuff like this. I want superheroes to be legitimate and real and this and that. Every writer now tries to appeal to that so much, and you guys only read Alan Moore anyway, so it's like polluted. Like this one writer, and everyone's trying to ape him, has made a whole medium like toxic to anyone else who wants something different.
I suppose that is another problem. Is a lot of our Phil and I's exposure to comics is from you guys, and we have not delved into a lot of modern age stuff. Like we've delved into a lot of formative, like, oh, here's this character, and you're showing us the best of their runs, where we have not seen the post-Moore stuff where you're trying to do more like twisted things.
Is it worse to have these people aping Alan Moore style or just the same superhero shit for 50 years?
But the thing is, it's more that the cynicism of it, where
Yeah,
like
cynicism.
I think that is detrimental to have an entire medium that's supposed to like inspire people and like be like a fun way for kids to learn like morals about like making the world a better place and doing the right thing. That now it's just like, what if they were all rapists?
But is that the inherent purpose of the medium? Is to be fun adventures that are
Yes.
uplifting?
Yes. Why do people not want the DC cinematic universe films? Because people wanted the Marvel films. They rather have there's a reason why these mediums become so much more about just dumb fun, especially in times when times are tough, like when comics first came into fruition, and now as comic movies become more popular, and why movies like Robin Hood and stuff became popular during the Great Depression and stuff like that, because people want fun escapism. And like dark cynicism, it has its place, but with a whole medium, like there's a reason nobody wants the whole medium to be just pure cynicism. No medium should ever be pure cynicism, because it makes everything just a dreary reminder of how much life sucks.
And I'm not saying that the cynicism doesn't have a place. Like I said, like Watchmen is what drew me in too. Like I was also part of this. But it's just like, because so much of like our society views like Alan Moore as like the only comics that matter, it kind of like delegitimizes the optimistic side of it in a way that like really bothers me. And also I want to say that Alan Moore's also a giant fucking hypocrite, where he's like, he like won't let anybody, he thinks anyone that tries to use his characters is like complete trash and a hack, but like all of his famous works are just taking other people's characters and deconstructing them. Like we talked about how Watchmen are all like Steve Ditko characters, and how like all these characters are other people's fictional characters, and he's like, I'm allowed to do this because I'm the best and I'm the exception, but like nobody else is. And I think that extrapolates to the medium as in general, where it's like, well, because Alan Moore did it, it's the best, so let's just like put him on this pedestal.
Yeah, one good example is Chris Claremont, the biggest X-Men writer, created Captain Britain. Alan Moore worked with Captain Britain on the Captain Britain story, and he created a villain for Captain Britain. And Chris Claremont was like, "Oh, I thought that villain was cool. I want to use him in my X-Men books." But Alan Moore got so pissed off, he demanded he be off the Captain Britain books. Like, fuck you, Marvel. And he stopped working for Marvel after that. He got so pissed off that another person dared to write a book.
Guys, I'm not trying to be a character reference for Alan Moore. I don't think he's a good. I don't care if he's. I'm not saying he's a good person.
I was gonna say we're going into some weird like personal attack territory.
I know.
I don't care.
I'm backing up. We're backing up why Alan Moore as a person annoys us.
Okay, and I can see that. It's just like for me, I'm like, his books are still some of the best comics I've ever read. So I'm like, I don't give a shit if he's a snake sorcerer in the woods.
But the thing is, that also relates to what we're saying, because it shows that Alan Moore doesn't consider other writers as legitimate, and I also like that. And I hate that too when creators think their farts are too fucking they don't stink or whatever.
Sure, I'm fine with pretension. For me,
I hate pretension. I fucking hate it. I hate it so much. I'd rather have a writer like Grant Morrison or other people who try to boost up, like Grant Morrison boosted up Mark Millar. Mark Millar betrayed him and was a dick. But I'd rather have writers that try help the medium along, and instead of trying to create this weird circular jerk off fest for themselves.
And also, Alan Moore has a lot of problematic shit about women in most of his books, so there's that too. But whatever. I think we've talked about this enough.
Whenever me and Ryan are having a therapy about why Alan Moore fucking pisses off.
Yeah. Wow. One episode. I hope you guys enjoyed our bonus discussion on Alan Moore.
That should be our bonus. Just us yelling about Alan Moore for 20 minutes.
It touches upon why people think comics aren't legitimate art form, and when people think Alan Moore is the only one that matters.
I totally understand why it pisses you off, but again, I have to say from it's totally understandable for a casual person who picks up a 60s comic and they're like, oh, it's Superman making jokes and taking gosh golly willikers, and then they pick up Watchmen. There is such a stark difference there.
But that's the dichotomy that bothers me, because people act like there's comics not written by Alan Moore that are all just campy nonsense, and then there's Alan Moore comics for grown-ups.
Yes, like Steve Englehart's Doctor Strange was before Watchmen and all that stuff. Like there were so many legitimate books in the 70s and even the 60s. There's so many more legitimate works that people ignore because everyone thinks it's all Superman going gosh golly gee willikers, and then that's the only exception you have.
And that cynicism is the only way to write superheroes, and like that's what bothers me. But I think it's an important conversation to have, because there's a reason why Sly and I pushed Alan Moore to be in Edgelord August, and it's for these reasons.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. Like, especially after reading this book where it was like, you know, I think you could make defenses for Barbara's paralyzation in like something like The Killing Joke, even if it ends up being like she's used for Batman and Gordon's anger and stuff like that. Whereas like this one, there were a lot of things where I'm like, I think you could do without it. Like in the first volume with the Arabic foreigners trying to rape Mina, I'm like, I think you could do without it. I think they could just try and like rob her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up this secret bonus episode.
That's it. It's wrapped up. We're good.
Okay, so thank you guys for listening. You should check out the rest of the shows at the Flying Machine Network. I would like to specially plug Podstorer Podcast this week. We've talked about it on Oops before because it's a political show, but Jess just had an episode where she interviewed a writer who was writing a book that was her response to the immigration crisis at the border. So you should listen to that. It's a really interesting interview, and you can check that out and all the other shows at the network at flyingmachine.network. And also check out the Patreon, patreon.com/flyingmachine, and we have some bonus episodes. So there's quite a few at this point, so check all those out. Oh, I was just on They See Me Rolling Again. I played another game of Fiasco, and it was really weird, and I don't know how much of the weird sex stuff was edited out, so check that out.
Hopefully none.
Hopefully none, but hopefully a lot. It's way weirder than the one we did.
Okay.
So yeah, check that out. It's They See Me Rolling. And that's all I got.
Thank you all for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been Mr. Hyde all along.
I've been holding a deep resentment for Alan Moore deep inside me.
I've been the shit of the world.
And I've been Captain Nemo, and I'm out of here.
Stay in continuity.